Good day, students. Welcome to mathgotserved.com, where we don't just solve, we teach. In this clip, we're going to be going over problems number 1 to 5 of our next generation Accuplacer review questions, focusing on arithmetic. Don't forget, there are 5 practice problems at the end of this presentation that we'd like you to try out in order to demonstrate mastery of what we covered in this tutorial. If you'd like to gain access to our entire collection of review resources to help you pass the Accuplacer, take a look at the link in the description below, or you can just visit our website at mathgotserved.com. Alright, let's take a look at question number 1. On problem number 1, you're being assessed on how to convert decimals to fractions, okay? Alright, so let's go ahead and review the process or the steps for converting decimals to fractions. We're going to be using 2 steps here. So the first thing you want to do is you want to divide the decimal by 1, okay, just as a guide. So divide the decimal by 1. So the goal here is to move the decimal point in the numerator and the denominator an equivalent number of times until the numerator is no longer a decimal, and then you've achieved full conversion. Okay, let's write that down. So you're going to move the decimal points. When we're talking about the decimal points, we're talking about the decimal points in the numerator and denominator, okay? So you're going to move the decimal points in the numerator and denominator equivalent number of times the focus is on the numerator, okay, until the numerator is no longer a decimal. Okay, all right, so let's go ahead and do a real quick review on this. So let's say we have 0.1, for example. Now, one thing you also have to remember for the Accuplacer is you need to know how to change from fraction to decimal to percent. Okay, so let's say you have 0.1 and you want to convert 0.1 into fractions. Sorry. So if you want to convert this into fractions, you divide it by 1, and in order to get your decimal point in the numerator to an integer, to a non-decimal, you have to move it to the right one place. So you're going to have 1 over 10. Okay, so 0.1 is 1 over 10 or 1/10, and that's the same thing as 10%. How about 0.01? How many times do you think you have to move the decimal point in the numerator here? 2 places, which result in 1 over 100. Okay, this is 100ths, which is equal to 1%. And then if you have 0.001, in this case, you have to move it 3 times, which would be 1 over 1,000, or 0.1%. This is known as 1,000ths. Okay, in this particular case, we have here, question 1 says, which of the following fractions is equivalent to 0.08? This is 800ths. Okay, so just by saying the name alone, you can automatically identify what the correct answer is based on the place value. Okay, but let's go through the steps. So step 1, we're going to write down, let's write down the decimal. Step 1 indicates that we divided by 1. So 0.08 divided by 1. Now the goal is you want to move the decimal point until the numerator is no longer a decimal. Okay, so 1 is the same thing as 1.0. So in the numerator, we'll have to move it how many places to the right? 1, 2. Okay, so in order to preserve equality, we're going to move the decimal point in the denominator an equivalent number of times, 1, 2. So in those spaces, we're going to insert 0 and 0. All right, so 0.08 in fraction form is 8 divided by 100. Of course, this can be reduced by dividing top and bottom by 4, which will give you 2 over 25. But in this particular question is the intermediate format that we're looking for. Alrighty, so the answer to question Number one, the fraction form for 0.08 is 8 over 100, option letter D. Alrighty, let's take a look at number 2. In question number 2, you're assessed on how to multiply integers presented in a word problems format. Question 2 reads, a sorority has 28 members. If each member donates 14 items for a charitable event, how many items will there be for the charity? Alright, so to get us started with this, let's go over the formula that's going to guide our problem solving process. Okay? Alright, so the formula for total amount. Now, just a real quick reminder, if you would like to gain access to all the formulas that you need to know to do well on the Accuplacer, visit our website at mathgotserved.com under Accuplacer, and then you have all the must-know formulas in order to do well on the Accuplacer exam, so do check it out. All right, so total amount is equal to number per unit multiplied by the number of units. Okay, so let's go ahead and adapt this problem to this particular formula. All right, so in this particular formula, we're asked to find how many items total. Okay, so number of total items donated. All right, so to get the total items donated, which represents the total amount, we're going to be computing the number per member, number donated per member, all right, because each member donates exactly the same amount, all right, multiplied by what? The number of members in the sorority, number of members. So this is the formula that we're going to be using to carry out this calculation, okay? All right, so total items donated is going to be, let's plug in the values into the variable. So total items donated is going to be the number donated per member, or for each member. So each member donates 14 items. So it's going to be 14 multiplied by how many members in all? There are 28 members. So 14 times 28. Okay, so to carry out this, we're going to be carrying out our integer multiplication, 2-digit multiplied by 2 digits. All right, so let's do this. So we have 14 times 28. Make sure you line it up perfectly by place value, or else your answer will be incorrect. Now we're going to start with the 8 in the ones place. So 8 times 4 is 32. So we have 2 carry 3. And then 8 times 1, 8 times 1 is 8 plus 3, that's 11. Okay, now we're going to advance to 2. We're going to multiply 2. Now, if you notice, 2 is in the tens place. So we're going to put a 0 here in the ones place to make sure that what we're multiplying lines up perfectly. So we now have 2 times 4. 2 times 4 is 8. And then 2 times 1 is 2. Okay? See how it lines up perfectly. Now after multiplying, you're now going to add it up. And then you're going to have 392. That's the total number of items that were donated to the charity by the sorority. So our answer to number 2 is option letter D. Okay? So this is basically how you multiply 2-digit integer by another 2-digit integer. All right, so let's write down what our answer means. A total of 392 items were donated by the by the 28 members of the sorority. All right, so there goes your answer right there. Alrighty, let's take a look at question 3. In problem 3, we're going to be assessed on how to add fractions. Okay, so in order to add fractions, there's something that's extremely important for you to remember. Alright, so you want to recall that in order to add fractions, in order to add or subtract, fractions, there's a certain criteria that must be met. Okay, in order to add or subtract fractions, the denominators must be equal. Okay, must be equal first. All right, so they basically have to be equal to something called the lowest common denominator. All right, so if they're both the same, then you have the common denominator there, and you can just go ahead and add. If they're not, then you find the LCD, and then you're going to be able to add. Alrighty, okay, so let's go ahead and apply that here. We want to add one. Well, let me show you a formula first for adding fractions. This formula is included in our formula sheet for the must-know formulas for the Accuplacer as indicated. So just check out our website for access to that formula, okay? And all the formulas you need to know. So you have A over B plus C over B. Now, if you notice in this particular case, the denominators are the same, okay? So how do you resolve a scenario like this? You add the numerators and keep the denominators. Do not add the denominators. Alrighty? And then if you have something like this, A over B plus C over D, in this particular case, you have to find the LCD. So let's just say the LCD in this particular case is BD. Okay? So if the LCD is BD, so you have to make both denominators identical. All right? So you're going to have AD over BD plus CB over DB. Now, check this out. The denominators are the same. Remember, multiplication commutes. So DB and BD are the same thing, okay? And then you're now going to add the numerator AD plus CB divided by the denominator in whichever format you want. You can write BD or DB. Doesn't matter. Let's just call it BD. Alrighty? So the top one is for like denominators. The second one is for unlike denominators. In this particular problem that we're dealing with, 1 over 5 plus 11 over 100, we're adding fractions with unlike denominators. So resist the urge to just add the top and the bottom, and then you get option A, 12 over 105, which is wrong. Okay, make sure that the denominator is identical first. All right, so to do that, we have to find the lowest common denominator of 5 and 100. In this particular case, 5 is a factor of 100, so it's going to be easy for us to figure this out. So 5 times what gives you 100? It's going to be 5 times 20, okay? All right, so what we're going to do is multiply the fraction on the left by 20, top and the bottom. Why are we doing that? Why are we multiplying the first fraction by 20? Well, we're doing that because we're converting it into an equivalent fraction with a denominator equal to the LCD. Okay, so let's just put a side note here. The lowest common denominator or divisor of 5 and 100, basically the smallest number that these two can go into evenly is 100. Okay, so that's our target number. So that's why we're multiplying this by 20. All right, so we're going to have 20 times 1 is 20. 20 times 5 is 100 plus 11 over 100. Now the question is, can we add right now? Absolutely. How do we know we can add? Well, because the denominators are the same. All right, so we talked about this earlier. In order to add or subtract fractions, the denominators must be equal. So they're equal here. So what do? You add the numerator, 20 plus 11, and keep the denominator. Do not add the denominator. That's incorrect. Okay? So following the formula we have right here, a plus c over b. So we add the numerator, 20 plus 11 is 31, divided by 100. Ladies and gentlemen, that is the final answer to question number 3. The answer is option letter D. All right, let's take a look at number 4. In question number 4, we've been assessed on how to add and subtract integers presented in a word problem format, like was in number 2. Okay, so let's read number 4. It says, 2 presentation planners has put together 380 folders for attendees and 22 folders for presenters. How many binders did the planners put together for attendees and presenters? Okay, so in this particular case, we have 2 parts. One part for the attendees and the second part for the presenters. 2 parts of exactly the same thing. So what's the formula of finding the parts together? Total of the parts together. Let's go ahead and write down the formula that's going to guide our problem solving process. So total of part 1 and part 2 together. What does this word together suggest? What operation does it suggest? We're putting folders together. Okay, so together basically represents the sum operation. So it's going to be part 1, number of part 1 plus, let's rewrite that. So number of part 1 plus the operation here is plus number of part 2. That's exactly what we're going to be doing here. Okay, so in this, let's adapt it to this problem. All right, so the total number of binders is basically going to be number of binders for what? The first part is for attendees plus, that's part 1. What's the second part? For the presenters, number for the presenters. So number for the presenters plus number for the attendees. Okay? And we know that's the case because of the word together. That word put together indicated the operation that we're going to be implementing. All right, so let's go ahead and put it together. How many binders were for attendees? There were a total of 380. So this is P1. So 380 binders for the attendees put together plus the number for presenters. This is P2, part 2, to make the whole is 22. Okay, so now we're going to be adding 2 integers. So when you're adding integers, 380, you want to make sure that the place values line up perfectly, or else you're going to ruin the sum. So you notice how I aligned the ones place together and the tens place. That's how you align it so that your sum is accurate. Okay, so 0 plus 2 is 2, and then 8 plus 2 is 10, 0 carry 1, and 402. That's going to be your answer for the total number of binders for both attendees and presenters put together. So the answer for problem number 4 is option letter C. Alrighty, let's take a look at question number 5. In question number 5, you've been assessed on how to find the percent of a whole. Okay? Alright, so question 5 reads, a restaurant stocked 160 cans of soup for a weekend sale. That weekend, 96 of the cans were sold. What percent of the cans of soup stocked were sold that weekend? Okay, so to calculate percent of a whole, you need to know what the formula is. So this is another formula that's contained in our must-know formulas for the Accuplacer. So do check it out at mathgotserved.com. All right. So the formula for finding the percent of a whole. Let's write down the title of the formula: percent of a whole. So percent of a whole is basically the part that you want to find the percent of divided by the whole. All right, so that gives you the fraction of the whole multiplied by 100. Okay, so this shows you the part of the whole as fraction form, and then when you multiply by 100%, that changes it into decimal. If you divide this part of a whole completely, that will give you the part of the whole in decimal format. Alrighty? Okay, so let's go ahead and adapt it to this problem. So the percent of soup stock is going to be the part. So 160 is the total. Okay, so out of 160, 96 were sold. Okay, so percent of soup, let's change this, percent of soup that were sold, that's what the question asks for. It says what percent were sold. Okay, so percent of soup sold, we're gonna have the part is basically going to be the part that's sold, all right, divided by the total number of cans. So this gives us the fraction sold, all right, but we need it in percent form. So what do? Multiply by 100. So this will convert it from fraction to percent. Okay, so let's go ahead and input the numbers here, the numerical values, into the formula so we can compute what the answer is. So we have part sold, which is 96, divided by total number of cans, which is 160. That will be multiplied by 100 to convert it into percentage. Okay, so let's do it. When we're multiplying fractions, it's good to, when you're multiplying a fraction by an integer, it's good to express the integer as a fraction so you do not confuse your numerator and denominator multiplications. Okay, there are two ways you can do this. You can either multiply and divide, or you can reduce and then multiply. We're going to reduce and multiply since it's less complicated. Okay, now anything in the denominator, if it has a common factor with any of the numerator factors, you can divide it out. Okay, 160 and 100, for example, both have a common factor of 10. So how do we divide that out? If you divide a number by 10, guess what? One of the zeros disappear. Okay, so if we divide 160 by 10, that's 116. If we divide 100 by 10, that's 10. Isn't that convenient? All right, let's go ahead and see what else we can reduce by. So 16 and 96, do they have anything in common? Well, these two numbers are both even. Okay, so 2 goes into every even number. So 2 goes into 16 8 times. 2 goes into 96. So you go 2 into 9 first is 4. Carry 1. 2 goes into 16 is 8. Oh, 8 goes into 48. How many times does 8 go into 48? 6 times. Okay, so 8 goes into 8 once. And then 8 goes into 48 6 times. And then you just multiply across. 6 times 10 is 60. And then 1 times 1 is 1. So your answer is going to be 60%. So 60% of the canned soup stocked were sold. So the answer to question number 5 is option letter B. So that's basically how you find the percent of a whole. All right, now let's go over another method for doing this. Okay, so if you don't like this method Particularly, let me show you another way that you can carry out this same computation. And then we'll give you some practice problems to try out. All right. So method 2, we're going to use the long division method. So to do this quotient right here, part over a whole, we're going to do 96 divided by 160 using long division. All right. So the numerator, or the top dog, goes in the doghouse, right? So the numerator is on top, so it goes underneath, it goes into the doghouse, and then the denominator is out right here. So we just divide this. Now this will give us the answer in decimal format, and then we're going to apply the appropriate procedure to convert it into percent. Okay, so 160, how many times does 160 go into 96? 160 is bigger than 96, so it can't go. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to put a 0 and add a 0 here. Now, how many times does 160 go into 96? If you look at your multiples of 16 was 16 times 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. If you do that, you find out that 16 times 6, if you carry out your multiplication, find out your multiples of 16, starting from 1, you end up with 6, okay? So what am I talking about? So you ask yourself, what is 16 times 1? 16. 16 times 2 is 32. 16 times 3. 3 times 6 is 48, carry 4, 78, and then 16. Or you can just keep adding 16 over and over and over again. And then, oh no, this is not 78, this is 48. And then you end up with 96 for 6. Okay, so 16 times 4 is 64. 16 times 5 is, you add 16 here, 1, 6 is 80. 16 times 6 is 96. Voila. So this is the one that we're going to be using. Okay. So if 16 times 6 is 96, that means that 960 divided by 160 is 6. So 6 times 160 is 960. We're just adding the zeros. Okay. So let me show you what I'm talking about here. This follows that 160 times 6 is what? 960. Okay? All right, so 6 times 160, we already see is 960. We'll put it right here. 960. Okay? So remember, when you're dividing, all you're just doing is subtracting factors. All right? How many times can you subtract a factor from the dividend? All right, so subtract this, and then it becomes 0. So your answer is 0.6. All right, so what is 0.6 in decimal? I'm sorry, in percent. Remember, we went over this exact type of problem in question number 1. So let's apply the same procedure again. So you put it over 1, and then you move the decimal point an equivalent number of times until the numerator is no longer actually until the denominator is 100. Okay, so remember, 6 percent basically means divided by 100. All right, so if you want to convert this to percent, what you're going to do is this: move, so you have 1 in the denominator. Okay, how do I make 1 100? You move the decimal point 2 places to the right. You do exactly the same thing in the numerator. You move it 2 places to the right. You fill in your moves with zeros, 0, 0, and then you get it in fraction form. But this is beautiful. You know why? Because if you have a fraction form over 100, the numerator is your percent. So this is automatically 60%. Remember what that word percent means. Percent just means divided by 100. So 60% is the same thing as 60 over 100. Okay, so let's go ahead and write something really important for you to see. For in the Accuplacer, you need to know that 0.6 is the same thing as 60% and is the same thing as 60 over 100. Okay, so you should be able to convert freely between these three representations of fractions, decimals, and percent. Okay, so you can clearly see that the answer is option letter B. Alrighty, now it's your turn to have some practice. Okay, all right, so we have 5 practice problems that we would like you to try out. So what we'd like you to do at this time, go ahead and pause this video presentation, okay? And then we'll go ahead and work on the 5 problems, and then when you're done, click on the play button, and then we're going to reveal what the answers to the practice problems are. Alrighty, welcome back. So hopefully you had a chance to try out these problems. Here are the answers to the practice test. For number 1, the answer is option letter C. For number 2, the answer is 330, option C. For question number 3, the answer is option letter B, 28 over 100. For question number 4, the answer is option letter B, 340. And then for question number 5, the answer is 45%, option letter D. So how well did you do on these 5 practice problems? Well, let us know in the comments section below how well you did. And if you have any questions about the answers or any of the concepts we covered in this presentation, please indicate it in the comment section below, and we'll be more than glad to support you. Thanks so much for taking the time to watch this presentation. I really appreciate it. If you found the contents of this tutorial helpful in your studies preparation for the Accuplacer, to give us a thumbs up. Your positive feedback is very valuable to us. Do not forget to subscribe to our channel. We upload math content to our YouTube page on a regular basis. So subscribe so you can get notified and gain access to our content. As indicated earlier, if you have any questions or comments, just post it in the comment section below and we'll try our best to assist. If you want to gain access to our interactive practice tests, the must-know formulas for the Accuplacer, and other valuable resources, do visit our website at mathgotserved.com or just take a look at the link in the description below. Thanks again for watching and have a wonderful day.